Now, 10 years on from the introduction of the Gender Recognition Act, it's time to review its impact on women and girls. That's according to the Countess group. They believe there's a push from parties like the Soc Dems to add non-binary gender into Irish legislation. Non-binary, for those of you that don't know, it means an identity that isn't either male or female. Sorcha Nic Lochlainn, who's co-director of the Countess, joins me now. Sorcha, good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm good. Good to talk to you this morning. Just to remind our listeners, it's 10 years on now from the introduction of the Gender Recognition Act. What did it allow for?
So the Gender Recognition Act is it allows for a very simple process for a person to legally change their gender marker on their documents. So that means that a man can fill in a form, pay a small fee, and then legally be treated as a woman by the state. So have new passport, birth cert, etc. And it has led to things like men being placed in women's prisons, homeless shelters, hostels, allowed into women's sport, etc., etc. It's a very simple process as well, just in case anyone is thinking of a sort of a kit process, which is what was discussed when they were bringing in the Act. All of that was removed, and now it's a self-ID. So that means a person's self-identification sufficient for a change of legal gender. It allows for the change from woman to male and from this is the language of the Act itself, so it's a bit confusing because they conflate man, woman, male and female. But it allows you to change from one to the other. What it does not allow for is else. So any of these other kind of genders that are people identify as or see as being part of that spectrum of transness, if you like.
Does any criteria have to be met by it? I mean, is it a case that you have to prove that you're going through some kind of trend or gender transition, or is it just a case of filling out a form?
The only time we've seen any rejections has been to do with residency. So I think you must be an Irish citizen. But aside from that, there's absolutely no medical input, no psychology, no sort of personal declaration beyond I intend to live as the new gender. And that can be revoked at any time as well. So it's very open to, as anyone who's listening can probably see, it's very open to abuse, but also it allows the introduction of a legal fiction. Somebody can't actually become a female if they were not born a female. It's not possible to be a man who is actually female. It's not possible to be a woman but you're actually male. So it's introduced a kind of a legal quagmire for a lot of sort of organisations and for women in particular who now are vulnerable to the abuse of this act by predators, perverts, chancers, cheats, anybody who likes, really. Yeah. And
in your experience, I mean, obviously the case of Barbie Kardashian has brought this to the fore again, but in your experience or from what you've seen, has there been widespread abuse of this?
Well, it's really difficult to say what abuse is, because basically you never know what somebody's underlying motivation for anything is. There could be people who are extremely distressed and really truly believe that they should be able to change their legal gender, and there could be people who are simply taking advantage of it. And there's absolutely no way for a woman in it, or anybody really, to understand what internal motivation somebody has, which is why this act is so dangerous. Because a male will always be a male and a female will always be a female. When you subvert that, you expose it to any kind of use that anybody deems fit. We just don't know. There have been cases reported where there's been violence in homeless shelters, for example, by males who have a gender recognition cert, or even who don't, who've been placed there because the law has been subverted in such a way. We know that that's documented. There have been men in women's sport because of this. So while you can't say so-and-so isn't really trans or so-and-so has abused it, because how would anybody know? It's an unprovable accusation, really.
Do we know how many people have applied for it?
We do, but I don't have those figures to hand. It's about 2,000 over the course of the year, so it's not a large amount. But the problem with it is that many more people use this act as justification. They don't even need a gender recognition cert, really, to kind of apply the protections of the act.
Are we seeing a little bit of pushback on this now politically? Because I saw Heather Humphreys speaking about it over the weekend, and it was quite interesting what she said, because she was very clear in what she was asked what a woman was, and she said a woman is someone who was born biologically female and a man is someone who's born biologically male. Is that the most straightforward answer you've heard from a politician on that so far?
Not from any politician. There are some who would go even more and just say that's it, that's all there can be. She did qualify that by saying, a trans woman is a trans woman or whatever. So she sort of backtracked a little bit on it. But it's great to see that kind of clarity coming back. The problem is that this act does not actually differentiate like that. So it conflates sex and gender in its wording, as I explained, and then it allows for this self-identification. And what people like Social Democrats are doing is actually intending to further collapse that kind of legal definition and introduce something that has no basis in law or reality. So as you said at the start, your definition of non-binary, it's meaningless. Everybody is male or female. You can't remove that and say I'm neither of those things. I mean, even when people have a disorder, they're still recognisably or can be determined to be male or female. But most people who are born, 99.99%, are recognisably male or female from birth. That's it. You're looked at, you know what somebody is. So it says very concerningly on the ISPCC website, so this is for children, it said, some people feel they do not fit into the categories of male or female. Some people feel their identity incorporates elements of being both a man or a woman, or their identity is neither male or female.
Have I lost you, Sorcha? Are you there?
On the wall and say,
oh, sorry, Sorcha, I lost you for a second. Sorry, I lost you for a second.
Sorry, and my apologies, I was out in the sticks.
You're okay.
Just around the definition on how you would introduce that. So non-binary has no legal, it has no basis in reality. It has no basis where you could legally say this is a person who fits that category and all these other people do not. Because anybody can say, I fit that category. It's not something that is definable by any physical characteristic. It's not something like a religion where you'd say, well, you can't discriminate. What they're talking about is allowing somebody to have a passport that says they're not male or female. That's just ludicrous. And it's further collapsing all of the protections that are given to women by the Equality Act as well. So it's very concerning, although not surprising to hear the likes of this from the Social Democrats.
Can I ask, what is the legal basis or status at the moment when it comes to if a woman goes into a changing room and there is a man in there, but he's a man who identifies as a woman, what can be done in that case for that woman?
Well, it's very difficult, and we would not advise someone to engage in a confrontation. Her legal protections are through the Equalities Act. So that allows for, if the presence of a member of the opposite gender, and just to remind listeners, gender in that context means sex. It does not mean this kind of nebulous newer definition or whatever. But if the presence of a member of the opposite sex would cause embarrassment, then they are allowed to have a legal discrimination against people of the opposite sex. So you are allowed to discriminate against men and say you're not allowed into a woman's changing room. However, we know that companies are very hesitant to enforce this, and they won't do so unless they're really pushed. So in the moment, it's quite difficult. You obviously would make a complaint, but it's, for women particularly, we're very vulnerable in that moment. We can't just approach a man and say, hey, get out. Most women would be terrified to do such a thing, because you never know how somebody is going to react. The likes of Barbie Kardashian or Shauna Kavanagh or any number of these other violent men who have these recognition certificates, bigger than us. We don't have that. So really, I would but to make formal complaints, rather go through formal processes, document everything, and try to make our fears and concerns known.
Okay, Sorcha, we'll have to leave it there because the line is breaking down a little bit. But great to talk to you this morning. Thanks for joining us this morning. That's Sorcha Nic Lochlainn there, co-director of the Countess. Some reaction to that. A listener says, gender is different from sex. Whether you identify with a given gender, masculine, feminine or other, is not the same as biological sex. The words are not the same. That's from Tony in Ballymac. Keep those texts coming into us, 083 311 3311.